Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be my monthly installment of Would I Repurchase? So that is a series I do here on my channel where I go through my eyeshadow palette collection, randomize 10 palettes, and talk about whether I would or would not repurchase them. So if that sounds good to you, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I would love it if you stuck around, but with all that, let's just get started. All right, first things first, we're gonna ignore this wing because my eye has been watering and I've had to redo it 3 or 4 times and it's just getting worse by the second. So hopefully it just stays long enough for this video. And I am doing a foundation wear test, so I feel like I'm looking a little bit glowier than normal, but we're gonna roll with it. Everything that I'm wearing is listed down in the description box below, but there's a lot of creators that do this type of video and I will have them linked down below as well. But the way that I like to do it is looking at the palette as it's already in my collection. I've tried it, I used it. If it was to disappear overnight, would I repurchase that palette? Some people like to do it where if the palette was just released, would they be interested in purchasing that palette? But for me, it's a repurchase. I already have it, and is it good enough where I would want to buy it a second time? So I like to randomize my palettes in the Tiny Decisions app. We are slowly but surely getting through them. And then I need to update this and add all my new palettes. But I'm gonna just pop up a screen recording while we figure out which 10 palettes I'm going to be talking about today. So the first one is Lethal Wildflower. Then we have the Roen 1111. Number 3 is the Klarity So Mermaizing. Gloss God's First Gal on Jupiter. Number 5, the PeriPera Muteful Rose. Lethal Rescue. Number 7, Pat McGrath Midnight Sun. Natasha Denona Ayana, 2 more. Lisa Eldridge Cinnabar. I think that was the last Lisa Eldridge that I had. And then the last palette is Glaminatrix Into the Night. All right, so let me pull those palettes and then we'll get started talking about them. Well, I was so excited to roll my palettes that I forgot to press screen record. So you're not gonna get a screen recording of me pulling them. You'll just have to trust me that those are the ones that were pulled. But we're gonna get started with the first one, and that is the Lethal Cosmetics Wildflower palette. Here is what this palette looks like. Very colorful, very spring, summer. I'm actually really excited to dip into this palette. Is it my favorite Lethal palette? It's not. It's probably closer to the bottom. But I actually really do love Lethal's formula. This shade right here is so, so pretty. I think that not only their shimmers are really nice, but their mattes are really nice as well. It's one of the first indie brands I actually started purchasing from, and I very much enjoy them. I think this is a nicely curated palette. It's not one that I reach into that often, but I think that if I lost this, I would actually kind of miss it in my collection. So I'm gonna put this in the yes pile. I think I would repurchase this just because I love purples, I love pinks. It's everything that I love in a palette, and I just love the formula. Next up, we have my Roen 1111 quad. I think this is my last Roen quad to talk about. And this is actually my favorite Roen quad. I really thought that 52 Degrees was gonna be my favorite, but it's definitely this one because you still have those pinky tones. You still have an element of coolness, which is why I thought I'd love 52 Degrees more. But it's this one because it's not so it's not as cool as 52 degrees. So this is just a nice, really well-rounded one. This would be the Roen quad I would recommend to people if they wanted to pick up a Roen quad. However, I can tell you that if this disappeared from my collection, I definitely would not spend the money to repurchase it. I wouldn't really recommend Roen as a brand. Personally, I don't like it. I think it's a little bit overhyped. But if it's something that you'd be interested in, this would be the one. But for me, like, I'm going to put this in the I would not repurchase pile. Next, Klarity So Mermaizing. I luckily have this in the little mini size here. So it used to come in a much larger format. Thankfully, I do not have that one because it would be so much product. But I quite like this palette. I think that it was a really well done palette, especially when like the mermaid thing was very much trending. I like that you have a coordinating matte and shimmer with each one. I'm still gonna say no, only because there's other pastel palettes from other indie brands that I enjoy more. I'm thinking of the Cosmic Beauty Delicious Delights. There's one that I'm like blanking on, but I enjoy it much better. It's not the Odin's Eye Spring Dragon. I would much rather this one over that one, but I just am not like a frequent pastel wearer. And so I feel like the Cosmic Beauty fills whatever I need to be filled with pastels. And I'm very much I really should only have like one pastel palette in my collection, and it wouldn't be this one. I do enjoy having it though. The few times that I've reached into this palette, it's a really nice formula. I'm just not sure what's also going on with Klarity Cosmetics because they seem to be really still trying to figure their way, whether that's rebranding, reformulating. So I couldn't even say if you were to pick up any Klarity Cosmetics palettes now, if it would still be the same formula. But this formula was really nice, as well as the shimmer formula. But for me, like, no, I would definitely not repurchase it. I don't think I just need it. One that I would repurchase is Gloss God's First Gal on Jupiter. I love Gloss Gods so much. I actually have an affiliate code with them. I'll put it up on the screen here and it'll be down in the description box. This is actually not my favorite palette from Gloss Gods. I think it's going to be the Vintage Glam, but for a cool tone option, they did a really nice job. I go back and forth because I'll say like positive things about this palette, and then other videos I've said negative things. I do have like some pros and cons. While I like the shades, I do think that they're a little bit redundant. It's not my perfect cool tone palette, but the formula is fantastic. They have exceptional special shades. I just feel like maybe we could have done with one less silver. These two matte shades are very close. So I would have loved to see a little bit more variety, not such a gray toned, cool tone palette, but it's still really nice. And when I pull it out, I love the looks that I get from it. And I am a little bit of like a loyalist to Gloss God. So I think that I would still pick this up if it went missing. Then we move into some K-Beauty, PeriPera. This is the Muteful Rose. I did like a huge haul with Yes Style, like my first time ordering, and then kind of reviewed all of those items. So I'll link that video up above and down below. But this was one of the palettes. And after that, I just didn't purchase that much K-Beauty. I just don't think that's like my avenue per se. I think it's really beautiful, and there's some lip products I specifically love, but eyeshadow is just not my favorite. I don't think that I would repurchase this palette. I don't think I would miss it, but I will say I have 3 of these. I have this one, I have the Hip Gray, and I have the Fallen Acorn. This one's probably my favorite. Again, romantic rosy tones. It gives a nice wash of color. I think it's something unique in my collection, but not something that I would spend the money on. I think this is like $22, and I just would rather buy something else, I think is what that just comes down to. I don't know. I'm not feeling this one. I think the packaging's really pretty, but it's also a little bit tough to store in my drawers. I just don't love it. The shimmers, if this was maybe an all matte palette, I would maybe like it more. But the shimmers also just like aren't super special. And it's really the mattes that I like. They give just, again, like a nice wash of K-Beauty color. That's what it's supposed to do. And then I think if maybe I had this as a companion palette to some singles, I would like it more, but it's just not an all-in-one palette. I just wouldn't repurchase it. Lethal Cosmetics, this is the Rescue palette. This was actually my first purchase from Lethal Cosmetics. And I purchased 2 charity quads, the Rescue quad and the Wildlife quad. I had thought that they come out with charity quads every single year, but since this one, I haven't seen them. Maybe I just haven't been following close enough on social media, but I don't know if they got rid of this whole concept. I really loved it though. Here's what this one looks like. I do like this one more than the Wildlife one, and I would definitely repurchase it. 1, because it's Lethal Cosmetics. 2, because it goes to rescue charities. So I would just be a sucker, continue to repurchase it. 3, it's purple, and that's my favorite color, clearly. So all those things just mean I would have to continue to have this in my collection. I love these little marble shades. And again, like this is what got me into Lethal Cosmetics and also just like led me down the road to indie. So I don't think I'd be able to necessarily go without having this palette. It's nostalgic for me. It has good memories tied to it. I love everything about it. I really, really enjoy this little quad. Next, we move on to Pat McGrath. So let's open this up. Pat McGrath Midnight Sun. I know a lot of people don't enjoy this palette, but for me, I actually quite like it. A while ago, I did a video ranking all my Pat McGrath palettes. I'll link that video. And this one actually went pretty high. I think though that this was one of her mothership palettes that didn't sell that well because this was the one where they just slapped the Star Wars sticker on top and tried to sell it off as like new packaging, but it was the same palette. And that tells me it just didn't sell that well, but I love this palette. I love the khakis in here. I love the purples. I ranked it above my Divine Rose, I'm pretty sure. I think this is a really nice palette. Would I repurchase it? I don't know because I really have just fallen off of my love for Pat McGrath. Like I said with Gloss Gods, I'm kind of a loyalist. I used to be that way with Pat McGrath, and I'm just not anymore. Realistically, I would probably repurchase this palette, but only when it's 40% off or something like that. I would not pay full price for this palette. Definitely not. I can't remember if I did for this one or not. I don't think so. I don't think I did. By that time, I knew that Pat McGrath did sales all the time, and that's when I picked this palette up. And yeah, I'm going to put it in the yes pile because I do think that I would still want this if it was to just like disappear. The Natasha Denona Ayana palette, this is back when she used to do these quints in this larger size before she did mini ones. And I think a lot of people got this from BoxyCharm, if I'm not mistaken. Myself included, I don't remember. This is actually a really nice palette. I don't mind it at all. I'm glad that she went away from the minis. However, I am a little bit disappointed because these palettes, like you can pop the shades out and the minis you can't. It would be really nice if you could do both for the mini palettes, but this is actually a really nice palette. The thing is, when Natasha Denona first came out with these palettes, these were like $55. So I can see why she did away with these, considering the midi palettes are $69 now. So it just doesn't make sense, but I don't know. This is a nice formula. I really, really like it. I don't think this is available anymore, but that's not a criteria. We're just assuming all of these palettes are still available for purchase in this pretend scenario. I want to say yes, that I would repurchase this palette. Again, though, like the Pat McGrath, I don't know if I would pay $55 for it. I would have to wait for some kind of sale from Natasha Denona, whatever that would be. I do have an affiliate code with Natasha Denona as well, so I'll link that on the screen if you want to save directly from her website. But even with an affiliate code, I would need more off than that because I think those save you 15% and I would need like 30%. This would need to be like a $30 palette for me to repurchase it, but I think I would repurchase it. I'm also going to put this in the yes. Now, in the no category, we can definitely put this little palette here. This is the Lisa Eldridge Cinnabar palette. My least favorite Lisa Eldridge palette, definitely. I'm just not like a warm tone lover, so this color story doesn't call to me at all. I remember actually when Lisa Eldridge first launched her 5 palettes, her original 5, I almost wasn't going to pick this up. And quite honestly, I only picked this up to have like all 5 of them to do a video review on. That's the only reason why I picked this up. I do not use it nearly as often. I should maybe declutter it, honestly. This might need to be on the chopping block for being decluttered, but it's not that the formula is bad. The formula is standard Lisa Eldridge formula, which I will say overall I don't think is great. So it's not like this palette performed worse than any other palettes. It's just, for me, it's purely color story. This is not something I gravitate towards. It's too bulky for me to like travel with, too nice for me to travel with. So I just wouldn't do it. Maybe if I rearrange the shades in this palette, that's an idea, because you can pop these shades out and rearrange it. Maybe I could get some use out of some of these shades, but as far as this curated color story, I don't love it, and I definitely would not repurchase it. And then the very last one that I have to talk about is Glaminatrix Into the Night. This palette looks like this. I like this palette. I do. Glaminatrix is one of my like top 5 favorite brands. I would say that the Sugar and Spice is my least favorite Glaminatrix palette. I think I actually talked about that in January's video, if I'm not mistaken. This one is a close second though. And it's the reason why I would not repurchase this is, again, like I feel it's a little bit discombobulated. You have like some bright pops of color, but then you have these really muted, deep tones. And I feel like it's just like 2 points away from being a really, really perfect color story of melding like light and neon, or dark and neon, excuse me, but something's missing from this. And I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. I do like this palette. I actually reached, when I did my looks with this palette, I did really like them, especially the neon shades. I think they perform well. It's not a matter of performance. It's just that there's something about this that is just missing. And again, I can't put my finger on it. So I'm going to say no on this palette. I would love to know actually if you have this palette and what you think of it, or if you decluttered it, if you kept it, if it's one of your favorites. I don't think it was one of their more popular palettes, but I do like this palette. Like I wouldn't declutter this palette, but I wouldn't repurchase it, if that's making sense. I'm still going to put it in the no pile, which means that I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a 50-50 split. That's nice because January was a little bit low. I mean, these two, I guess we're like kind of putting in the middle because I said I would only purchase them on sale. So Pat McGrath Midnight Sun, Natasha Denona, Ayana, I did put in the yes, but really I kind of cheated and said only if they're on sale. Then we have my 2 lethal palettes, the Lethal Wildflower and the Lethal Rescue Quad. Definitely my favorite one out of the 10 we talked about today. Gloss Gods First Gal on Jupiter. And in the no pile, I have Glaminatrix Into the Night, PeriPera Muteful Rose, Klarity So Mermaizing, Lisa Eldridge Cinnabar, and Roen 1111. I'm okay with the 50-50 split because at least it's not more no's than yes, but this is like why I love doing these videos, is it does kind of get me to reevaluate my collection, reevaluate maybe future purchases on if these palettes stand the test of time in my collection, because I want to have palettes in my collection that I can't live without, that I would repurchase if they were to go missing in my collection. And so when I say no to palettes, it makes me pause and it makes me just think a little bit more on what I'm bringing in. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, that's going to wrap up today's video of would I repurchase. I would love to know your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you own any of these palettes? Would you repurchase them? Did you already declutter them? Are our opinions the same? I would love to know. Anyways, this is where I'm going to leave you all. I hope you're having a great one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.